This is my fair use disclaimer. The first video linked in the pinned comment and the description will be this video that I've titled Plasma Fire 101 Overview for Beginners and Copyright Fair Use Disclaimer for Educational Purposes. It is an hour and 5 minutes long and gives a rough overview of the 7-year study that I've conducted using field research myself, traveling to 10 different states as a long-haul trucker, and the evidence I've amassed that shows that these fires are electricity-based. Therefore, I'm adding contextual and conceptual understanding to the content that we're about to watch. Therefore, it qualifies as fair use for educational purposes. Following the first link that I just described is a long list of resource references of educational material for anyone that wants to comprehend the electric nature of these fires. After exposing yourself to enough of the evidence, you will certainly, without a doubt, come to the understanding these fires are electricity based. And those 20 links that I just scrolled through are just the beginning. There's hundreds more where those come from on this YouTube page, and I give anyone and everyone authorization to utilize that video content in any way you want. You can crop out the YouTube channel so no one can see what channel it came from and dub your own audio over the top of it and make it your own video. This is a truth that does not belong to anybody. So what you're going to see, let me make sure we're still playing here. Oh, that would be why. What you're going to see is a repetitive pattern. 100% of these cars, 100% of these cars have 100% of their glass gone. You see the missing back hatch on this car right here? That's another repetitive pattern. Traditional fire does not do that. And you will see that over and over. Missing hood, missing doors, missing back hatch, missing all of the glass. Leaves still on the trees, shrubbery still surrounding. That car has missing doors as well. And this repetitive pattern is something you will see on Santa Monica, what's the rest of his channel name? Close Up. He gives you a walkthrough you're not going to see. That one's missing its hood and its engine. Microwave energy is drawn toward the densest material. The engine block is the densest part of the car. This one too, missing its hood and most of its engine, and its rims are melted and the glass is melted. SMCU gives you a walkthrough that you're not going to find on any of the mainstream news channels. And just like in Lahaina, the first 48 hours, you were able to Google Palisades Fire and find, or YouTube search that same terminology and find, what I'm showing you here is, yes, there's blue and there's also green plastic things that remain. It's not the color of it. It's the material it's made out of. That theory that blue things didn't burn is a blue herring meant to mislead people to false, erroneous conclusions. It's a rabbit hole they sent you down. That car is also missing its back hatch. And this is the reason you won't see a walkthrough or a ride-through on mainstream news, because they don't want you seeing the repetitive patterns. They do their news broadcast from one location and give you a couple of different angles. All the glass is melted. The hood appears to be dislocated off the side. That might be the rest of the hood. That car too, missing the back hatch. And all of the glass, and the rims are melted. The mainstream news broadcasts are not going to show you this. They do not want you seeing these repetitive patterns. The leaves are still on the trees. Missing the back hatch. And there's a good reason for that. There is a higher degree of morality in lying than absolute honesty when it comes to a subject like this. Missing the back hatch. missing the glass. Missing the glass. And the rust color. That comes from a process called electrolysis. That's part of the electric nature of these fires. There are 90% electricity, 10% flame. All you can see is the 10% flame. The electricity is doing the rest of the burning. And the reason that it is a higher degree of morality and ethics and principles and priorities. Again, you're going to see the same repetitive pattern: missing doors, missing hood, missing glass, melted rims. The reason there is a higher degree of morality to giving people half-truths and not the whole truth, and even putting out disinformation agents like Wigington. The analogy I use is like telling your children there's a monster under the streets that looks out through the storm drain grates looking for little kids' ankles, and he reaches up and he drags you down into the sewer or the storm drain, and he sucks your blood in order to spare the child the pain and discomfort of getting hit by a car. You speak to them in a way that is appropriate for their current growth and development of their consciousness on the learning curve. Telling them, I don't want you to get hit by a car, stay out of the street, doesn't have the impact. It doesn't effectively alter their behavior. There's a black plastic can right next to the blue one. There's people out there, there's a green one. There's people out there like Brush Junkie, and Wigington uses her and her cohort Shane as useful tools to push the propaganda when he says, oh, you can melt glass in a campfire, melt a glass bottle, missing engine, missing hood. You can melt glass in a campfire. And the ignition source of these fires could just be some government stooge. And the reason the trees aren't burnt in between the houses is because they can't burn, they're wet. And the reason they're burned from the inside because an ember hits them at the bottom where there's a crack in the bark and they're all dried out on the inside. He is out there. It's called a limited hangout. He is doing this for the purpose of narrative driving, to drive the conversation away from the acknowledgement of the electricity and the energy in these fires. And oh no, it's just it burns hotter than normal because of the accelerants of the aluminum powder and the bellows effect of the wind. Shoot, they've been melting steel since 2,000 years ago using bellows. No, nothing new, seeing the steel all melted with a little wind. That's to be expected. That's what Wigington is out there doing, pushing that narrative that there is no electricity burning these, there's no electricity coming from underground. I'll include it in an upcoming video. You got Minutes of Horror also showing Brush Junkie saying, she says it's maybe coming from underground, like I don't know what, like maybe underground tunnels or something? That's a counterintelligence propaganda tactic, is that they latch onto a narrative and attach other things to it. Like, oh, she says it's coming from underground, huh? Like she got some of those ideas from Jeff about this being electricity ground current, huh? Let's latch onto that and say, well, you mean like underground tunnels? Like where the lizard people are down there human trafficking and stuff? That's underground? That's where they're lighting them from? You're one of those people, huh? She thinks they're coming from underground. Yeah, the tunnels, huh? They go straight to Epstein Island. That's what Wigington is for. That's what Minutes of Horror is for. That's what counterintelligence propaganda agents do. They latch on to the discussion and pull it in one direction or another. And their agenda, look at the leaves right in front of the melted car. Leaves still on the tree. Their agenda is to drive your attention away from the recognition of the electricity nature of these fires, and instead direct it toward chemtrails. It's just because, aluminum powder's used in, it's an accelerant used in all fireworks. That's the reason. You see, the wind and the accelerant of the aluminum powder do not account for the fact that on these trees you'll see a highly charcoaled spot right next to an unburned spot, like a lightning bolt is moving its way through the log and creating a streak behind it, like leaving a wake in water. And you can see the wake of the lightning bolt that moved through the wood, leaving right next to the lightning bolt completely unburned. If it were just accelerants, those are evenly distributed. The wind is evenly distributed. That would not account for why we see highly charcoaled pieces of wood right next on the same log, highly charcoaled part right next to a completely unburnt part, right next to another highly charcoaled part, right next to another completely unburned part. That cannot be accounted for by, well, the accelerants that have been sprinkled from the sky and the wind. Those are both evenly distributed. The aluminum powder didn't land on this part and turn it to charcoal and not the part next to it. Now look at all these cars. Every single one, zero glass, missing hood, missing engine block, melted rims. Zero glass. In a regular fire, that's another one of the repetitive patterns, 100% of these cars have 100% of their glass melted. Oh, well, you can throw a beer bottle in a campfire and melt it. This is tempered glass, missing its back hatch. That one there is missing its back hatch. The one you're about to see is missing all four of the doors and the hood and the back hatch and all the glass. Oh, well, it's just the wind. The wind makes the fire burn a little hotter, Those are disinformation agents, and I give them the benefit of the doubt that they're doing what they're doing out of a higher degree of morality to keep the kids from hurting themselves. There's no fuel around any of those cars. Nothing next to it to catch it on fire. That's why they keep telling, well, it must have been an ember that blew over and touched the car. And that's why it did that. Ember touched it. If the people recognized what we're looking at here, they would be more destructive than the fires themselves. So it is of paramount importance. It is an imperative that we keep the general population unaware of the electricity nature of these fires. I'm not worried about this going viral. They've got this channel very well throttled. They can meter the distribution and they can monitor those who have encountered this information and track it and control it. This isn't going to get out to a wider audience. These are the last plasma fire videos I will be making. This is it for me. Trying to do the same thing over and over and expecting different results is one definition of insanity. I started my video that I've titled Fiery Sermon from the Valley of the Shadow that I made about 4 years ago. I started that video out saying, you guys, I know I've been saying that I'm not going to make any more plasma fire videos, but they just keep on happening and I'm still the only one looking at them, so here I go making another one. Continuing to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is one definition of insanity. And I've passed that threshold about 5 years ago after I'd been doing this for 2 years and realized there's something wrong with people's brain. They're incapable of comprehending this. You see, one of the recent people that commented on one of my videos said, hey, we've all got a pause and a fast forward and a rewind and we can zoom in. So don't do that anymore. Nope, I'm going to keep doing that to force you to look at it because that person is expressing through that very comment that they would prefer to just glance at it as it passes by, not take a second look and not give it a second thought. That way they can compartmentalize it, disassociate from it, and carry on with business as usual. Normalize it and minimize it as their way of coping with it. When I rewind it and show you again and again, it caused her such discomfort. She left a comment, said, hey, we can rewind it and pause it and look at it a second and third time if we want. You don't have to do that. She's expressing that she would rather not have it shown to her 2 or 3 times, and if she had her way, if she had her choice, she would not have looked at it a second or third time. It caused her such discomfort for me to rewind and show it 2 or 3 times. She found it necessary to leave me a comment to tell me to stop doing that. No, that's why I do that. There is a saying that occasionally men will stumble across the truth, but most of the time they pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing ever happened. That's what she wants to do. And that's why she gets pissed that I rewind and show you a second and third time. She wants it to just glance right by. Hey, I saw it once, all right? You don't have to show me a second and third time. Why are you doing that? Stop that. She wants to pick herself up and hurry off as if nothing ever happened. I'm showing you the fence right there, completely unburned. I think that's what I was focusing on. Maybe the weeds and the vines within the fence. These trees still have their leaves on them. Wigington said, oh, well, you know, trees are damp inside and they're so wet that they can't burn, but the ones that burn from the inside are doing so because they're dry on the inside and don't even notice that the leaves are still on them. Those disinformation agents are out there for a reason. Because if this went viral and people recognized what's actually happening, they would have to install martial law worldwide. This one's missing all 4 doors, reduced to a shell of a car. And even declaring martial law probably wouldn't work to keep the people from acting like animals and tearing each other apart, missing a back hatch, melted rims. This is such a repetitive pattern, you're never going to see this kind of a presentation on mainstream news. And within that first 24 hours, just like Lahaina, you could get private videos like this guy's showing you, walking through taking videos. You could search those up in the first 24 hours, and after the first 24 hours, they alter the algorithm, so when you search Palisade Fire, the only thing you're going to get is mainstream news coverage where they don't show you a walkthrough or a ride-through and allow you to see the repetitive patterns. They show you one house from one angle, maybe 2 or 3 angles, and when you notice, their bushes and their shrubbery right next to their house isn't burned, that's one thing. But when you see it over and over and over and over, that's when it really gets your attention. Likewise with the missing back hatch, the missing windows, the melted rims. You see it once from one angle, and it really doesn't disturb you much. Well, you know, there's anomalies. I guess something weird could have happened. When you see it as not an exception to the rule, but the rule and the norm and the standard, that's when you start to go, wait a minute, that's not how fire works. And they don't want people doing that. They want people thinking this is fire. Fire is the 10% on the surface that you can see. The other 90% of what's happening here is electricity. There's no fuel around these cars that are parked on the side of the road to catch them on fire, so they tell you, an ember did it. It's electricity. Whether it works like a microwave, or it needs a physical, which travels through the air, or it needs a physical material to travel through, like the ground itself, it is electricity-based fire. There is no doubt about that. Link will be in the description to SMCU's YouTube channel. He's got 5 or 6 of these roll-throughs that are very eye-opening. I suggest you watch them. You won't find this content anywhere else. They have buried the personal videos in the algorithms, and now they've got the military stopping people from even going in that war zone. He's about to show you a trailer park that burned. Every trailer except for one. The one that didn't burn was untouched, and like I said, that's a pattern. In a conventional fire, some of the houses would be burned 50% or 75% or 25%. In these kinds of fires, I'm showing you that the trees still have foliage on them, leaves or pine needles or whatever's on those trees. In these kind of fires, plasma fires, once that filament of electricity latches on, engine, looks like the engine's still there, but the hood and the fenders and the glass, gone. In these plasma fires, no houses are all burned either 0% or 100%. That is not something that happens with conventional fire. That is also not accountable just by accelerants being sprinkled in the sky in the form of aluminum powder or wind being added for the bellows effect. All of the houses are burned 0% or 100%. In a conventional fire, you would see some houses that are only half burnt, a quarter burnt, or 75% burned. You don't see that at all in these fires. All of the cars are missing 100% of their glass. 100% of the cars that got burned are missing 100% of their glass. In a real fire, a conventional fire, none of that glass would melt because it's tempered glass. It was made differently than a beer bottle. It was forged in a higher temperature process to harden it. That's why it's far more difficult to break and far more difficult to melt than a beer bottle. That glass doesn't melt until about 2700 degrees. Far beyond what a forest fire or a car fire reaches. So this isn't a forest fire or a car fire. This is an electricity fire unlike anything we've ever seen, and it is imperative that they keep the general public from becoming aware of this, lest they go into self-destruct mode. If they were to see this, there's the melted aluminum all over the ground, missing the hood. Repetitive pattern over and over and over. If the people were to recognize that this is a natural, their primary objective is to keep people from noticing the electricity nature of these fires. And then once the people start to notice, they'll have to go to plan B. Tell them it's directed energy weapons. That way they think someone's in control of it, and it's not just out of control. Because if the people discover this is a natural phenomenon, geomagnetic induction, as part of the fluctuating magnetic field, there is a surge of ground current, and we can do what we can to try to direct it to places like Siberia and northern Canada, the most sparsely populated places on the planet. But sometimes it's going to pop up in urban areas because that's where it's naturally drawn to, because that's where the most conductive material is, metals. If the people recognized this is truly apocalyptic, end of days type of stuff that we're seeing, look at the leaves that are still on that tree. That's another repetitive pattern. If the people saw this as a natural phenomenon, something the government has no control over, then the government would have no control over the people. They would not obey the laws. They would not pay their taxes. And there's a fundamental instinct that people have. They're willing to sacrifice someone else for themselves. None of them are willing to sacrifice themselves for someone else. That's why all these preppers are stocking up on beans, bullets, and bandages, and when it comes down to the last can of beans, I'm going to make sure you die so that I can live. And I'm going to let your family die so I can perpetuate my family. I'm going to sacrifice your comfort and convenience and well-being to perpetuate my own. That is the fundamental character flaw that ensures if people found out about this at large, they would go into self-destruct mode. They would tear each other apart. They would become more destructive than the fires themselves. That's why there is a higher degree of morality to give them a story and lie to them than to give them the direct, honest, straightforward truth. It is effectively more moral in accordance with that underlying priority of preventing them from hurting themselves. Just like the parent who tells the child about the troll that lives under the bridge. That story probably started back in the day when parents didn't want their children playing on the bridge that goes over the river, because if they fall in, then they're going to get hurt or die. So they made up a story, told them about the troll that lives under the bridge that eats little kids to keep them away from the bridge. That is effectively a higher degree of morality than absolute honesty with your child. And the general public is like children. And you have to speak to them on their level, which is appropriate for their level of conscious development. And because their conscious development is still that of an animal, and they are willing to sacrifice others to perpetuate their own comfort and convenience and well-being, they're willing to sacrifice someone else's. You cannot tell them the truth about what's happening. You must keep them in the dark to keep them from destroying their neighbors. Even their so-called friends and families are just circumstantial alliances. And once those circumstances change, those alliances go up in smoke. And it's I, me, my, kill or be killed, survival of the fittest, the quick and the dead. Those people would turn into savages and animals and tear each other apart, and you know it. And thus, there is a reason we should be grateful that they have kept this out of the perceptual awareness of the general public. Can I get an amen? Feel like I'm preaching a little hard over here, but I want to show you guys in some of the upcoming videos. What's his name? Minutes of horror using Brush Junkie like a useful tool, trying to latch on to the narrative and drive it in a certain direction. Oh, she says it's coming from underground. I don't know, maybe from some underground tunnels or something. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's what she must be talking about, huh? Or Crow 777 saying, I think everyone needs to go buy every blue tarp that's out there, and we all need to blue tarp our roofs. That blue herring, like a red herring, something that is meant to mislead you, send you down a trail, misleading you away from the truth. I'm showing you that the tree under there. Crow 777 says, yeah, we all need to go buy every blue tarp out there, and everyone needs to blue tarp their roofs. That's good to mislead people. To make them think, oh yeah, because it's a laser, right? And the lasers don't burn blue things, right? Even Joe Biden got in on the act saying, yeah, you'll see all these houses burned down, and then this is the one that's not burned down because it's got the right roof. He didn't say the word blue, but he's feeding into the same narrative. There's more unburned foliage. And so these narratives that they put out there to mislead and misguide people, whether it's underground tunnels, is that what you mean? It's coming from underground, like the tunnels? You mean like from Epstein Island and where the lizard people are doing the trafficking? Those underground tunnels? Is that what you mean when you say it's coming from underground? To latch on to these narratives and drive them in false directions that will make the people more manageable. Because if the people believe that it's some sort of directed energy weapon, then it's under someone's control, someone's pushing that button, and they will still rely on the government to provide them with safety and protection and save us from whoever's directing this energy. If the people know that it's not in anyone's control, then they will be out of control. And they would be the greatest danger beyond anything these fires present. The people themselves would be the greatest threat to all of us. I think it's pretty obvious. Their consciousness has not developed. They still have those animal instincts to sacrifice someone else for myself. If it's going to come down to you or me, it's going to be you, and I'm going to survive, and you're going to die. None of them are willing to say, you take the last can of beans. My family isn't more important than yours. I'm not more important than you. All of them are willing to sacrifice others for themselves. None of them are willing to sacrifice themselves for others. And it is that fundamental characteristic, that quality of character, that animalistic instinct that all of them have not grown out of, which is why you need to treat these children accordingly and tell them stories and do anything you can to prevent them from seeing what it is I've presented on this channel for 7 years. I've been shouting it from the rooftops, and if I was successful, we would all be fucked. By keeping this under wraps for the last 7 years, they have prolonged society, the calm before the storm. It has been 7 years of livable environmental circumstances. If the people found out about this in mass numbers, it would not have been livable. It would have gone into Mad Max scenario, and they would have need to engage martial law. And even if they declared martial law, what if the military themselves aren't willing to enforce it because they can see that time is short? Why would I spend my last days trying to control everyone else when obviously time is up? People wouldn't even obey martial law if they realized the magnitude of what's happening. Even the military and the police forces themselves wouldn't show up to work. They'd say, what, are you going to charge me for going AWOL? It's the end of the world here, can't you see? Why am I worried about going to your military court-martial or whatever? You see what I'm saying? Even declaring martial law wouldn't be effective to maintain order. The people would become the most destructive, self-destructive element, far beyond anything that these fires are doing. And there's a good chance that in the near future, as part of this disclosure, they're going to say E.T. did it. Yeah, E.T. did it, you know, with space-based lasers and the drones and the fog. And I'll talk about some other stuff in another video. I don't want to get too carried away with too many of my crazy ideas. I'll save that for another video. Where they're destabilizing us right now, disorienting us right now, in order to restabilize us and reorient us in a collective initiation process. First, they break you down in order to build you back up. They cannot add information to your current self-image and worldview and your current paradigm. They need you to discard everything you think you know. Otherwise, you just add the new information. Look at those leaves still on the shrubbery. Otherwise, you just add the information to your currently existing preconceived ideas. They need you to discard all of them. And when you put someone in a disoriented state where they feel like Alice in Wonderland falling down the rabbit hole, suddenly the rug got jerked right out from under them and their whole world is turned upside down and inside out and they don't know which direction is up, as they will grab onto the first solid thing they get a hold of when they're falling down that rabbit hole. You put them in a mental state of disoriented to the point where nothing is real. They don't know what's real or what's true. Who's on what side? Look at those dry, brittle. You know what they call that? They call that kindling. Those grapevines right there? Yeah, that's called kindling. That's very dry, brittle, flammable material. And it's surrounded by melted metal. You know, this example in this trailer park might give us an idea of what's depicted in the Hindu religion when they speak of samvartaka fire. Samvartaka fire destroys all that displeases Indra, indicating it has some sort of conscious awareness and the ability to differentiate between that which displeases Indra and that which doesn't. Well, by the looks of everything you see around here, anything man-made is destroyed. Everything natural is what remains. That might be the dividing line between what displeases Indra and what doesn't. See that bush right there by the, what is that, a juniper? Whatever it is, it's highly flammable, and it's surrounded by a completely destroyed, melted building. Even the concrete turns to dust. There's overhead aerial views from drone footage after these fires where you can see the grid pattern of rebar that was previously encased in concrete. And that rebar acts like a tuning fork, an amplifier, a resonator, an antenna, and vibrates the concrete around it to dust. Let that soak in for a minute. So everything you're seeing around here, anything that's natural remained unburned. Everything that's man-made is destroyed. And maybe that's the dividing line between that which displeases Indra and that which does not. That's just a wacky, crazy, zany idea I had while looking at this destruction and recognizing that there is a fine line between what got destroyed and what didn't, and it follows the same fine line of what's natural and what's man-made. Look at the leaves on the branches reaching down, touching that truck. See the leaves still on the branches? Yeah. Kinda exemplifies the point that I was making. Look at the little kindling bush right there to the right of that car. That kindling bush. Thus, it's obvious this is not conventional fire. It is not flames that melted those cars. It's electricity. And it's drawn towards the more conductive material, and it leaves the bushes behind and the trees behind. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in the plasma fire to the disclosure process. into your whole blue beam thing you've been waiting on. So yeah, E.T. done it. E.T. done this. We didn't want to tell you guys because, you know, however they want to layer the stories. Oh, look at the destruction, man. That's another car. What was that, a golf cart next to the car? Or was that a car? You can't even tell anymore. It's reduced to a couple of pieces. So yeah, we're going to go through the disorientation and bewilderment phase. And once you're falling down the rabbit hole, you got blown out the airlock and you're just floating in outer space. And you're so disoriented you no longer have a north and south and an east and west or a up and a down, left and right, true and false. Your whole world has just been turned upside down. The rug got pulled out from under you. You'll grab onto the first solid thing that is made available to you. They have to get you to discard your old ideas in order to latch on to the new ideas. They cannot just provide you with new information and new experiences. They have to get you to discard your old reality, your preconceived ideas. They have to break you down in any initiation before they build you back up. That's true in the military and boot camp, in a college, in a fraternity or a sorority. They call it hazing the new pledges during Hell Week. Missing hood, missing fender, missing glass, missing door handles, missing gas cap. I don't know why the gas cap flap. It's somehow just the way that the electricity courses through the frame and the body of the car. Regular fire doesn't burn the doors off but leave the rest. Or burn the hood off and leave the fenders. And make a fine line between the hood and the fenders where the fire clearly hit the hood more than the fenders. That's not possible with fire that's attacking the car externally from the outside. Only with electricity that is burning the car from the inside and it courses through the metal and chooses one route and doesn't go down the other route. A bolt of lightning that goes toward the hood and does not go towards, and look at all the unburned foliage. And there's another car in the background. Look at all the leaves. And they'll show you more melted destruction just over the ledge here. Yet they expect you to believe that flames did all of this. Flames melt the metal, but they don't light up the leaves. No, microwave energy draws toward the densest material, and electrical energy draws toward that which is most conductive. That's why it leaves the leaves and the highly flammable material and burns the non-flammable material, what we typically think of as non-flammable: metal, brick, concrete,